Hey, 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 how you guys doing? Good to see you. Hi, Al. My name is Dee, and I'm streaming out of Humboldt County about Humboldt County to Humboldt County and anyone else who cares. And today we're going through the making of America, and we are on lesson number 14, session number 2. So we're kind of moving along a little slowly, but we are comprehending and we're pumped up and excited, aren't we? I'm super pumped up and excited. I already have these pages uploaded. I want to get right into it. It's a straight read today, and then we'll start doing the questions on Friday. So let me show you where you can find this study and follow along. If you don't have your own kit already, I highly encourage you to get your own kit. And if you can't afford your own kit, then just follow along with me and we'll keep you in the loop on everything. I am also going to be, let's see, am I going to leave 2 on? I think I'm turning off 2. This is just to scoop you up and bring you over to Humble Hilltop Workshop. So channel 2 is going to get removed right now. So do find us over on the link that was dropped there if you're in number 2, okay? Because I'm removing it right now. And that's just part of the YouTube shuffle. Somebody should make a song about it, you know? Whoops, I don't want to view it on YouTube. Actually, I meant remove. That's what I meant to say. I meant to say that. And delete. It won't even be there. Why? Because this is better. We want to be on the same chat room. We don't need to be in 2. Why do I keep adding 2? Because most of my subs and viewers are there. And it takes a couple weeks to bring them all over. So we're on a new channel right now. All right, so we're going to go to standuphumboldt.news, the Constitution tab over here all the way on the right, the Constitution study at the top of the page. Here's the kit that I got, and I wanted to share with you as I'm learning it. So that's what I'm doing. That's what the stream is. We've already done 1 session. Woohoo! We're on 2. And we've done the first 25,000 pages of reading. No, just kidding. We've done the first 10 pages, part of The Genius of Natural Law, the second 10 pages, which was The Man Who Discovered America's Freedom Formula. And today we're to read about the power plant of the Constitution. And then we'll get into these questions on Friday, and I do hope to be able to go through them a little quicker than before. But we're going to start reading right now, and this is 49 to 261. Should be uploaded here, and they'll only be here while this lesson is current, and due to copyright laws, you know, it's coming down, and then the next lesson will be up. So you can always follow along with the old videos, and you'll have the material will be there. I highly encourage you to purchase your own kit and have this in your library. It's one of the most extensive, comprehensive historical books and writings of how they created the Constitution. It's not just about the Constitution, but what were they into? What was going on? You know, they were educated people that were, a lot of times, they were reading books a lot and playing music and, you know, continually working on developing their minds. And that's why I'm so appreciative of anyone who's listening to this and learning about our history with me, because a lot of this is new. I did take colonial history from a great professor, Ginsburg, at College of the Redwoods. He was incredible. And actually, D-Dog reminds me of him a lot, our friend. He's always about the language. You got to watch your words and how you speak, you know. All right, let's see. How many rambling we do? Not too much. Hey, Bonnie. Hey, All First Kingdom. Hey, what's up, Cam? See, I told you I unbanned you. This is a straight read. It's kind of a boring stream for some, but you know, this is what I'm doing right now. And on another side note, real soon, April It's a big day, Humboldt County. We're putting together a vendor show, a vendor event, a community gathering of mom and pops, movers and shakers, startups, home-based businesses. Gonna get some silver circulating. Mike Collum will be here from the Renegade Nation to help explain about private associations. It's gonna be big, so I'm really excited. And with that, I'm 5 minutes in. Oh yeah, you got to leave Tin TV alone. Don't mess with the kitty cat, okay? That's my advice. I was advised to advise you. We're learning on YouTube, Cam. Don't take it too just some people have shows and some people have chat shows and some people work really hard on putting on a show. And they have topics and stuff. And, if you ever do that, you'll know what it's like when somebody just comes in and they start, distracting from the chat and distracting from you. And I'm doing that to my viewers right now, but that's part of just trying to be graceful to you and help you understand this isn't always just a chat room where people just want to be talking about, drama and stuff. And I know you know that, but I'm just doing you a courtesy because I really, Tin's my sister, and I look out for all of us who are sharing the truth. And I know you share the truth. So it's not everybody's favorite style. I don't care about that. It doesn't matter to me. But yeah, I would just not mess with the kitty. All right, and with that, we're 6 minutes in, 6.5 minutes in. You're not the bad guy. You're well appreciated. Yep, we got to pay more attention to saving our country, and that's what we're doing here. So thank you guys for being here. I'm really honored anybody's even just want to listen to this, because I know there's 1,000 million other things that everybody could be doing right now. This is like 15 minutes, and I don't know, I want to enrich my mind. So thank you for wanting to do the same thing with your mind, because I think that's the result of just listening to history and reading and our government, and in lieu of everything that's going on, when you hear the words of our history and how this was set up and all of this, it can help fill in your own dots of hope. I hope that's what it does for you. I really do. Hi, Diana. Good to see you. Okay, here we go. And 7.5 minutes. All right, we're reading about the power plant of the Constitution. The founders considered the power to make laws to be the most significant part of the government machinery. It was for this reason that the Congress was made the central power plant for the entire system. Not only were the House and Senate given the exclusive power to make the laws for the United States, but they were also given the responsibility of monitoring the entire system and initiating new laws wherever needed. There was no intention, however, to make Congress a supreme power unto itself. The founders carefully hedged it up with various checks and balances so that the people would not be subject to the uninhabited tyranny which they had been forced to endure under the British Parliament. And I want to drop this link for you guys if you want to follow along. I know you are. It does. I know you're joking. Just don't even worry about it. Just, you know what? I know you don't care, so don't care, right? Just don't do it again. Just brush it off and just don't do it again. We're all looking out for each other. I'm looking out for you. I'm looking out for her. All right, back to this. We will now make a careful examination of the lawmaking process as designed by the Founding Fathers. And I hope my things are in order. Are we at 250? Yay! All right, here we go. Provision 8, Article 1, Section 1, Paragraph 1. We're actually getting into it. Oh, and the choir said, hallelujah. All legislative lawmaking powers granted by this Constitution shall be vested exclusively in the Congress of the United States. This provision gives every American the right not to be subject to any federal law unless it has been reviewed and approved by a majority of the people's representatives. As originally conceived, the American lawmaking procedure was just about as the founders could make it. Their legacy to future generations included a series of highly significant guidelines for Congress. Because a number of these have been seriously eroded, it might be well to briefly review their suggestions. Federal laws should be few in number. Madison wrote, "The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined." And followed this policy when he was president. On one occasion, he wrote, "The path we have to pursue is so quiet that we have nothing scarcely to propose to Congress. A noiseless course, not meddling with the affairs of others, unattractive of notice, is a mark that society is going on in happiness. Imagine Congress convening in Washington and the president telling them that he doesn't know of a single new law needed to make the system run more smoothly. The founders appear to have subscribed to the motto, if it works, don't fix it. Unfortunately, today, many governmental agencies feel that they must continually propose a long agenda of new laws in order to give reason to justify their existence. Each law should be written in simple, non-technical language. Jefferson said, laws are made for men of ordinary understanding and should therefore be construed by the ordinary rules of common sense. Their meaning is not to be sought for in metaphysical subtleties which make anything mean everything or nothing at pleasure. Jefferson roasted the British Parliament for writing acts that were tautologous, involved, and parenthetical jargon. He called their statutes barbarous, uncouth, and unintelligible. I would say the same today. The House to scrutinize proposed laws as the representatives of the people. Oliver Wolcott of Connecticut stated, the representatives are to be elected by the people at large. They will therefore be the guardians of the rights of the great body of the citizens. So well guarded is this Constitution throughout that it seems impossible that the rights either of the states or people should be destroyed. According to the Constitution, all federal lawmaking authority was given to Congress, the Senate to scrutinize new laws as the representatives of the states. As Charles Pinckney of South Carolina said, the Senate will be elected by the state legislatures and represent the states in their political capacity, and thus each branch, House and the Senate, will form a proper and independent check on the other, and the legislative power will be advantageously balanced. Unfortunately, this balance was lost with the passage of the 17th Amendment in 1913. The president scrutinizes new laws from a national viewpoint. James Wilson of Pennsylvania said, he will, under this Constitution, be placed in office as the president of the whole Union and will be chosen in such a manner that he may justly styled the man of the people. Being elected by the different parts of the United States, he will consider himself as not particularly interested for any one of them, but will watch over the whole with paternal care and affection. I consider it as a very important advantage that such a man must have every law presented to him before it can become binding on the United States. The courts must scrutinize new laws in terms of the Constitution. If the validity of a law is challenged, then it is to be scrutinized by the federal courts to make certain that it conforms with the requirements of the Constitution. Alexander Hamilton's the view of the founders. The courts were designed to be an intermediate body between the people and the legislature in order, among other things, to keep the latter within the limits assigned to their authority. The interpretation of the laws is the proper and peculiar province of the courts. A constitution is, in fact, and must be regarded by the judges as fundamental law. It therefore belongs to them to ascertain its meaning as well as the meaning of any particular act proceeding from the legislative body. With so much good advice concerning the lawmaking process, it was no doubt expected that the proper procedure would remain strictly within its prescribed limits, particularly in view of the statement in Article 1, Section 1, that all lawmaking authority would be vested exclusively in the Congress. However, that is not what happened, shattering the jurisdictional chains of the Constitution. The Constitution was designed to make the states sovereign in their realm of responsibility and the federal government sovereign in its realm. The big question is whether or not they might encroach on each other. It is interesting that almost from the earliest years of the nation's existence as a republic, the three branches of the federal government strained at the chains of the Constitution in their endeavor to invade the territory of the state jurisdiction. Let me read that again. It is interesting that almost from the earliest years of the nation's existence as a republic, the three branches of the federal government strained at the chains of the Constitution in their endeavor to invade the territory of the state jurisdiction. So, sometimes this occurred through gradual usurpation as the Congress passed laws which preempted state functions. At other times, it has been a question of the executive branch using a modest enabling act of Congress to absorb a massive amount of administrative authority over the states. Finally, there has been a tendency of the courts to favor this federal encroachment on the states by all three branches of government. Therefore, in spite of the clear and precise declaration in Article 1, Section 1 that Congress shall have the exclusive power to make all federal laws and that those laws would pertain only to the powers enumerated in the Constitution, here's what happened. Message from modern Washington planners: if you don't, we will. I know this one. Perhaps it was inevitable that Washington would develop a paternalistic attitude towards the states. No doubt that is why the structure of the Constitution was designed to keep them separated. Nevertheless, a neat little gimmick was conjured up by planners which targeted the states with various programs and attached a message: if you don't, we will. Thus, if federal monitors perceived a problem among the states which was not being handled to their satisfaction, there was an open declaration that if the states did not take care of the matter, the government, even though it had no constitutional authority to do so, would feel compelled to take action. All kinds of federal money began to be appropriated and federal regulations to go with it because the states were not complying with federal standards. Before long, the states could say to Washington what the Declaration of Independence had said to George III: he has erected a multitude of offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. These programs include everything from safety belts and speed limits to land reform, environmental programs, reparation of state legislatures, city beautification, central city planning, health regulations, physical facilities for education, hospitalization, daycare centers, nursing homes, local charities, unemployment, job training, and so forth. The singular part about all of this is the fact that these welfare programs and social goals were for the most part wholesome and desirable, but the founders had said a federal delivery system for these purposes would be wrong. In fact, it turned out to be the most extensive delivery system in the world. It has been operating from the wrong level of government. Once in place, however, it became a gigantic task for anyone to return it to its proper level. Temptation of the executive branch to write laws. The expansion of the executive branch into the law business had developed gradually. Ever since the Interstate Commerce Commission was developed in 1887, various governmental agencies have been issuing edicts known as administrative law, which are enforceable in the courts just as much as the laws of Congress. The Congress has also passed broad enabling acts and delegated to the executive branch the power to issue executive orders which are enforced as laws, even though they are never officially approved by the Congress, but are simply published in the Federal Register. Today, more laws are imposed on the American people by these unconstitutional and irregular means that are passed by Congress. Wait, let me read that again. Today, more laws on the American... No, before that. Congress has also passed broad enabling acts and delegated to the executive branch the power to issue executive orders which are enforced as laws, even though they are never officially approved by Congress, but are simply published in the Federal Register. Today, more laws are imposed on the American people by these unconstitutional and irregular means than are passed by Congress. The idea of the president issuing executive orders as enforceable laws has gone through several stages. The constitutional stage. In the beginning, the president or his officers issued executive orders to their departments. These were simply administrative orders and affected only the administrators and agencies of the government. In other words, they did not affect the public as the laws of Congress do. Gradually, however, these executive orders began to increase in number and scope of influence. They began to affect the general public and not just the internal operations of government. Executive orders thus passed from the constitutional stage to the strong president stage. The transition to this new stage is indicated by the number of executive orders issued by the various presidents. For example, President Cleveland issued only 71 executive orders. McKinley issued merely 51. However, when Theodore Roosevelt came to office, he issued 1,006. From this point on, each president looked upon executive orders as a tool to demonstrate the power of the president to take independent action. President Teddy Roosevelt held to the view that he could do anything not specifically prohibited by the Constitution. He missed the founders' doctrine of enumerated powers, which said he could do nothing that was what the Constitution authorized. As he proceeded to follow his own interpretation of his constitutional powers, Theodore Roosevelt broadcast executive orders in every direction. He greatly expanded the authority of the presidential office and wrote, "I decline to adopt to the view that what was imperatively necessary for the nation could not be done by the president, find some specific authorization to do it. My belief was that it was not only his right, but his duty to do anything that the needs of the nation demanded, unless such action was forbidden by the Constitution or by law. Under this, like making your own laws, under this interpretation of executive power, I did cause to be done many things not previously done by the president and the heads of the departments. I did not usurp powers, but I did greatly broaden the use of executive power. The World War I stage. Under the exigencies of the First World War. I don't know that word. Exigencies of the First World War, President Woodrow Wilson used the war powers to impose administrative law and executive orders on almost every phase of the American life. I'm going to write that word down for a second. I'm going to look it up after. Exigencies. I'm sure it's just some, obviously it's just some type of order or some type of order of things. President Woodrow Wilson used the war powers to impose administrative law and executive orders on almost every phase of the American life. For example, the Food Administration, Grain Corporation, the War Trade Board, and the Committee on Public Information were all set up by executive order without being specifically or individually authorized by Congress. On the basis of implied authority, the president used his broad war powers to range across the entire economic and industrial horizon of America. The strict application of Article 1, Section 1 has never been the same since. The New Deal stage. This covered both the Depression era and the World War II years. Between them, the use of executive orders became so broad that the legislative powers emanating from the president and the executive branch became a permanent part of the lifestyle of America. I think America was checked out by then, right? Grieving. These executive orders became so numerous that in 1935, Congress passed the Federal Register Act, which required the publication, of all executive orders in the Federal Register and their subsequent filing with the U.S. Archives. The State Department previously had custody of these orders and began numbering all available in 1907. However, it is eliminated that the unnumbered orders lying in government files may be as many as 15,000 to 50,000. Interesting. To gain some idea of the quantity of orders being poured out on the public as well as on government agencies, the official count by January 1985 had reached 12,498. Executive orders usually cite some authority for their issuance, but many of these would be totally irrational to the founders of the nation. In the early 1930s, the Congress became nervous about delegating so much of its lawmaking power to the executive branch, and so it began monitoring the various agencies to make certain they were issuing executive orders in harmony with the original intent of Congress. However, in 1984, the Supreme Court declared that it was a violation of the separation of powers doctrine to have the Congress monitoring the administration of the executive branch. Amazingly, the court did not say that it was a violation of the separation of powers doctrine to have the Congress delegating its lawmaking powers to the executive branch in the first place, making secret executive agreements. It was never contemplated by the founders that the heads of nations would sit in a huddle and reach secret agreements other than temporary wartime strategies among allies. To prevent the negotiation of secret agreements, the founders required that all treaties with foreign powers must be submitted to the Senate for approval. During World War II, the State Department began negotiating for secret arrangements as part of their Allied war strategy, and this established a precedent for the so-called executive agreements, which were accepted as commitments along the heads of state, but were never presented to the Senate for ratification as treaties. A typical example of an executive agreement was the Yalta Agreement, which worked out between President Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin in 1945. Gosh, my nose is driving me crazy. I'm sorry. All of a sudden, it's just so itchy. Just want to itch me. A statement was issued on February 11, 1945, but it soon became apparent that other commitments were made which were never presented to the Senate were beyond the strategic agreements authorized by the War Powers Act. Under severe pressure, the State Department finally released the conference papers in March 1955, but held back certain sensitive material. Yeah, I'm sure all the good stuff. To this day, neither the Senate nor the American public is completely aware of all the commitments made to the Soviet Union at Yalta. Temptation of the judiciary to write laws. When the courts gets into lawmaking process, it is excused under the convenient euphemism called judicial activism. This occurs in two phases. One is judicial legislation, which is usurpation of authority from the legislative branch, and the other is judicial administration, which is usurpation of authority from the executive branch. This is often done under the aegis of necessity. I need that word too. Aegis. Oh, no. AEGIS. Of necessity, because we can get the gist. Still want to look them up later. The federal courts complain there are social needs which are not being met by the states or the Congress, and therefore the courts feel compelled to take action. This kind of reasoning would have shocked the founders, but it has been employed repeatedly by the Supreme Court on the ground that the judiciary is merely carrying out established public policy. This is a dangerous crutch to judicial activism, since slavery was once established public policy. Policies are set by Congress, not the courts. The courts arena relates to laws and rights, not policies. The increase in judicial activism has been creeping upward for years, but it has leaped into a full gallop during the administration of Chief Justice Warren. Here he is. He was disturbedly involved in judicial activism. The court not only began handing down decisions in terms of social necessity and established public policy, but it began reversing previous Supreme Court decisions by the bushel basket. It also became heavily involved in administrative duties, including the administrative of state school systems, state prisons, and state employment policies. Ching, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Even earlier, the court unlawfully laid the foundation for what turned out to be an amendment to the Constitution in the 1936 Butler case, where general welfare was twisted to allow special welfare, and the federal budget jumped from $6 billion to $600 billion in one generation. The Warren Court then went on to wipe out the right of the states to deal with subversion and internal security, declaring without any action by Congress whatever that the federal government intended to preempt this authority. It reduced to virtual extinction states' residence requirements for voters, made the states elect their state senators on the basis of population instead of senatorial districts, imposed federal standards of procedure on local police, sustained executive orders imposing federal standards of air, water, speed, safety, and health on the states, and otherwise made invasions into the sovereign and exclusive domain of the states. As with the executive branch, much of this judicial activism was with good intentions and high moral aspirations. But the delivery system was wrong, the administrative system was wrong, and the results were corrosive and corruptive to the constitutional system. The accelerated usurpation of unconstitutional authority by the courts was anticipated by Thomas Jefferson. He saw hints of it even in his own day. He saw it as a gravitational force pulling power away from the states and concentrating it in Washington. He wrote in 1821 the following: "It has long, however, been my opinion that the germ of dissolution of our federal government is as the constitution of the federal judiciary, working like gravity by night and day, gaining a little today and a little tomorrow, and advancing its noiseless step like a thief over the field of jurisdiction, until all shall be usurped from the states, and the government of all consolidated into one. To this I am opposed, because when all government shall be drawn into Washington as the center of all power, it will render powerless the checks provided, and will become as venal and oppressive as the government of George III, from which we separated." Two safety nets. The founders provided devices as safety nets to protect the people from unconstitutional irregularities, either by Congress or by the courts. The first safety net was to give the state legislators in Article 5 of the Constitution power to reverse the decisions of either the Congress or the courts by calling for a convention to amend the Constitution. It was set up so that neither the Congress or courts could prevent it. As Alexander Hamilton stated in the 5th article of the plan as provided in the Constitution, that Congress will be obliged, on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the Senate, to call a convention for proposing amendments which shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution when ratified by the legislators of 3/4 of the Senate states, or by conventions and 3/4 thereof. Hamilton then continues, the words of this article are peremptory, mandatory. The Congress shall call a convention. Nothing in this particular provision is left to the discretion of that body. We may safely rely on the disposition of the state legislators to erect against the encroachments of the national authority. The second safety was the common law jury, which existed in all its powers until 1895, when the Supreme Court robbed it of half its strength. See Sparf case under principle. I'm going to write that down too. It's probably in here. Excuse me. The original American exercising full common law authority had the power to pass judgment on the law as well as find the facts. Under this arrangement, if the members of the jury felt particularly law was unjust or unconstitutional, they could bring in a verdict of not guilty no matter what the Congress or the courts had said. The founders considered this to be the people's ultimate defense or weapon of last resort against abuse of government. Here is how one of the founders, Theophilus Parsons, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Massachusetts, explained it. The people themselves have it in their power effectively to resist usurpation without being driven to an appeal to arms. An act of usurpation is not obligatory, it is not law, and any man may be justified in his resistance. Let him be considered as a criminal by the general government, yet only his own fellow citizens can convict him. They are his jury, and if they pronounce him innocent, not all the powers of Congress can hurt him. And innocent certainly will pronounce him if the supposed law he resisted was an act of usurpation. As mentioned above, in 1895, the Supreme Court withdrew from the American juries the right to pass on the law. This was made the exclusive prerogative of the courts. Of course, the court had always been able to interpret the law for the jury and tell the jurors how the law should be applied in a particular case. However, this interpretation by the court was merely an advisory opinion, and the jury was told that it could not decide for itself, even ignore the court's interpretation if it so desired. Since 1895, the jury has been bound to accept the law as set forth in the judge's instruction. By this means, the judge can often manipulate the jury as it reaches its decision, which might be quite different if the jury were passing on the law as well as the facts. Applying the remedy. The first safety net, the power of the state legislators to call a convention and reverse the Congress and the courts, must become operational. As of 1985, it has never been used. This device could then be employed to restore the powers of the common law jury. After that, a carefully structured new Bill of Rights could be submitted to a constitutional convention, which would restore the original genius of a divided, balanced, and limited government as envisioned by the founders. The most important aspect of the problem is popular inertia. Assuming that the system is inflexible and cannot be changed, we must have a generation of Americans who believe in the founders' original success formula and who have the ingenuity and grit to restore it as the founders initially planned it. Now let's proceed to the next principle. Okay, this is our last page. Oh no, it's not. My gosh, 2 more. Okay, like 3 more pages. The Congress shall consist of 2 separate legislative bodies. One is to be called the Senate and the other is to be called the House of Representatives. This provision gives the American people the right not to be subject to any federal law unless it has been approved by both Congress. In the Articles of Confederation, there was a provision for a House of Representatives with delegates from each of the states, but there was no provision for an upper house or Senate. Nevertheless, as the years passed by, most of the states had an upper house in their legislatures, and it was felt best that the national government should also have a Senate. At the Constitutional A raging debate erupted over the best method of representation in these two houses. In a historic compromise, it was decided to have the population represented in the lower house and each state equally represented in the upper house or senate. Senators were therefore to be appointed by their state legislators to represent the state and to see that its rights and interests were protected. This role was changed in 1913 when the 17th Amendment was adopted. This amendment provided that senators must be elected by the popular vote of the people, just like congressmen. Senators therefore now represent the people of the state at large, but there is no one in Washington specifically appointed to watch over the state's rights and state sovereignty. A serious deterioration in state right and state sovereignty has occurred since the 17th Amendment was adopted at the insistence of the states themselves. The genius of the original formula may be best appreciated when it is realized that the founders invented something political scientists had been seeking to accomplish for centuries: the combining of the one, the few, and the many. Perhaps it is worth repeating the highlights of this mixed form of government which the 17th Amendment altered. Here is the background. Classical political philosophers found great merit in a one-man monarchy in time of war or great emergency. They also found that the wealthy families who constituted the aristocrats, the few, constituted a safeguard against the reckless ambitions of the monarch or the soak-the-rich demands of the people, which would destroy the property and production or industrial base of the nation. On the other hand, they noticed that the monarch and the aristocracy had a tendency to ignore the needs of the common people, so that they often suffered so shamelessly that the mass were compelled to overthrow the whole political system by violence and revolution. Polybius, Locke, and Montesquieu all advocated inventing a system which would combine all three of these groups so that the advantage of the one could be exercised in administering the law and taking over in wartime the few. They could participate as the guardians of the property, wealth, and order of things, and the many that could be represented in a House of Representatives so that the will and approval of the peoples as a whole would be considered before laws were passed or taxed assessed. The American founders set out to achieve this for the first time in modern history. This one turned out to be the president, the few turned out to be the Senate, and the many turned out to be the House of Representatives. This arrangement was adopted by the federal government in nearly all of the states. Only Nebraska set up a unicameral legislature, a House of Representatives without a Senate. The founders explained why the federal Constitution provided for both a House of Representatives and a Senate, similar to the pattern already adopted by several of the states. Here are some of the questions answered by the founders during the discussion of Principle 9. What are the purpose and the structural characteristics of a sound upper chamber, such as the Senate? Hamilton. There are few positions more demonstrable than that should be in every republic some permanent body to correct the prejudices, check the intemperate passions, and regulate the fluctuations of a popular assembly. It is evident that body instituted for these purposes must be so formed as to exclude as much as possible own character those infirmities and that mutability which is designed to remedy. It is therefore necessary that it should be small, that it should hold its authority during a considerable period, and that it should have such an independence in the exercise of its powers as will divest it as much as possible of local prejudices. It should be so formed as to be the center of political knowledge, to pursue always a steady line of conduct, and to reduce every irregular propensity to system. Without this establishment, we may make experiments without end, but shall never have an efficient government. It is an unquestionable truth that the body of the people in every country desires sincerely its prosperity, but it is equally unquestionable that they do not possess the discernment and stability necessary for systematic government. To deny that they are frequently led into these errors by misinformation and passion would be a flattery which their own good sense must despise. That branch of administration, especially which involves our political relation with foreign states, a community will ever be incompetent to perform. From these principles, it follows that there ought to be two distinct bodies in our government, one which shall be immediately constituted by and peculiarly represent the people and possess all the popular features, another formed upon the principle and for the purpose before explained. Such considerations as these induce the convention who formed your state constitution to institute a Senate of the present plan. The history of ancient and modern republics had taught them that many of the evils which these republics suffered arose from the want of a certain balance and mutual control indispensable to a wise administration. They were convinced that popular assemblies were frequently misguided by ignorance, by sudden impulses, and the intrigues of ambitious men, and that some firm barrier against these operations was necessary. They therefore instituted your Senate, and the benefits we have experienced have fully justified their conception. Bicameral legislative proves double security, or provides double security, Iredell. The legislative body should be divided into two branches in order that the people might have a double security. It will often happen that in a single body, a bare majority will carry exceptionable and pernicious measures. The violent faction of a party may often form such a majority in a single body, and by that means the particular views or interests of a part of the community may be consulted, and those of the rest neglected or injured. If a measure be right, which has been approved of by one branch or the other, will probably confirm it. If it be wrong, it is fortunate that there is another branch to oppose or amend it. As originally designed, whom did the Senate represent? Senate represented the states. Iredell. The people will be represented in one house, and the state legislators in the other. See. In the general constitution, the House of Representatives will be elected immediately by the people and represent them and their personal rights individually. The Senate will be elected by the state legislators and represent the states in their political capacity, and thus each branch will form a proper and independent check on the other, and the legislative powers will be advantageously balanced. While the Constitution effectively secures the states in their several rights, it must secure them for its own sake, for they are the pillars which uphold the general systems. The Senate, a constituent branch of the general legislature, without whose assent no public act can be made, are appointed by the states and will secure the rights of several. The other branch of the legislature, the representatives, are to be elected by the people at large. They will therefore be the guardians of the rights of the great body of the citizens. So well guarded is this Constitution throughout that it seems impossible that the rights of the other states or the people should be destroyed. Why was the Senate designed to slow down the legislative process? Hasty legislation is dangerous. Hamilton. In the legislature, promptitude of decision is oftener an evil than a benefit. The differences of opinion and the jarring of parties in that department of the government, though they may sometimes obstruct salutary plans, yet often promote deliberation and circumspection and serve to check excesses in the majority. Why was the structure of the legislative branch called a miracle? Mason. He believed the mind of the people of America as was well settled. First, in an attachment to republican government. Secondly, in an attachment to more than one branch in the legislature. Their constitutions accord so generally in both these circumstances that they seem almost to have been preconcerted. This must have either been a miracle or have resulted from the genius of the people. Well, that was almost too much today. I probably might stop like 10 minutes ago because I was even droning myself out. Oh my gosh, you guys, that was so much. It was very telling how DC took the states. Yeah, let me see your comments here. I know. Let's see. Don't think we have any representatives. They don't do anything good. I think Kevin Kiley and James Gallagher are good for California. What's next? I always say Kali World. Nah, you're not being pissy. It's true. It's, that's what happens when you see how it was, how they set it up for us, and how it is today. It's if your option is spot on, it's proper, it's because you're connecting the dots and you're seeing the truth for the way it was supposed to be. And I'm not taking it that way. I think that it's really, to deny there's what's the first step is to acknowledge there's a problem. We have a problem. We have a big problem. And yeah, it's very telling how DC took over. It's very telling how the federal government crept in. And what's even more interesting is the warnings and the heedings of the founders that this would happen. And it's when we took our eyes off of it. I've never been involved in like community politics or engaged like I wish I was. And I can imagine there was a time in America when everybody was involved in their community and everybody knew who was, their sheriff and who was, what was going on. I mean, all you have to do is really go back and watch A Little House on the Prairie. I mean, if you were bad with the Olsons, you probably weren't getting anything because that was the only market there was. You know what I mean? So people don't want to go back to that, I guess. Cruz is up there fighting for the president act when Americans are attacked in foreign countries. That's scary. Yeah, we don't need the president to be having power. Resist dissipation or usurpation. I missed that. Pernicious, tending to cause death or serious injury, deadly, causing great harm, destructive, quick, slow to burn. So we have more than enough grievances to dismantle, but it takes common law court. Yes, what it really is, Bonnie, is I've watched people in the courtroom over and over. There's many people that do it that can own the courtroom. But you have very few people that have confidence to walk in and own that courtroom. And you have very few people that even want to put themselves in a situation where they would have to be in a courtroom. The programming, the fear, all of it is very, very real. And nobody want to go to jail, and nobody want to stand before a judge, nobody want to talk to a police officer, don't want to talk to no sheriff, because we're all already slaves. That's why. So, I'm with Martin Luther King. I have a dream too. I have a dream that we're brave and that we're smarter than just people that need to be entertained hour after hour after hour. That we could come together and that we could actually remedy our counties, our communities. Your internet gets shut off, you're going to be thinking about a lot of things real quick. Things that we were thinking about years ago when all of us dove into YouTube and we started following preppers and learning about laws and listening to people. And now we are here 3 years later, and what if the internet got shut off tomorrow? Is your community connected? Can you connect your community? Jump in a part of your community that's already connected. That's what I want to encourage you guys to. It's not just about the laws and stuff. I have a lot of interests. I'm interested in health and wellness. This is affecting my mental health and wellness. My community politics affected my health and wellness. Excuse me. So it's to the point that I can't. Evil men rule when good men do nothing. Our men are fighting in the meta. They're fighting in the meta because it's safer and they get more accolades and more rewards and more dopamine and serotonin. That's way more exciting than standing before a judge for some. I would like an opportunity to stand before a judge. I hope I know my everything. I can't wait for my opportunity. It's fear. We're in the situation that we're in because of fear. Because people are afraid. They're afraid. And I'm not interested in fighting anybody or anything. I'm focusing on just making our own path. Doing our own thing, doing business unincorporated. Forget you, government. Forget you. We're going to make you just so irrelevant. And then we're going to outnumber you to the point where then we'll come for you. Because right now, people aren't seeing it yet. They don't see how this is going to work out. And I don't see either. It's going to take an act of God. But it's also going to take us being willing vessels, amen, to be the hands and feet and to do the work that needs to be done. No one is coming to save us. Yes, Jesus is coming back. But are we just sitting around here waiting and not helping protect children? Better a millstone were tied around their neck and they were tossed to the bottom of the sea than they keep hurting these kids. And for those of us to stand idly by while they do it, man, Jesus is watching us all. We're just going to live up in Sodom and Gomorrah and not about it? American? You are an American. Act like it. Stop acting like you are subservient or a slave to this government. You are this government. The reason we're in the position that we're in is because I'm not doing my job. And most likely, maybe you're not either. And we have to know our stuff better so we can hold these people accountable. We're figuring it out. It's a slow crawl, isn't it? It's a slow, painful crawl. But every day, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And we are on step 15 now. So thank you guys so much for hanging out. I really appreciate you all. And I don't think I'll see you later, but maybe I'll see you in a... You might find me in a tiny small chat room. I was in one yesterday that had only 7 people in it at one time. She gets more too, but it was just down to a lull. It was Venus Cupcake. She's been doing some interesting streams. There's some presentations out about biometrics and how it affects your body. And Jenny, we got to talk about that stuff, you know? We got to talk about that kind of stuff. But thank you guys for hanging out. This was another long one. I'm probably don't have to edit out too much of this one, but the one that Monday was, I do need to edit out some more. But I'll be back Friday, hopefully at 12:30, and hopefully I won't come up like the last 2 Fridays. I do intend to be here. You're welcome, Diana. Oh yeah, I'm living on Breathe cough drops by doTERRA, and I got some ginger ones, and they have throat drops too that are good. But yeah, it was a lot of reading today, and it was kind of I was putting myself to sleep. So thank you for hanging out with me while I read, because I was like, oh boy, I'm droning myself out. But now we'll be in the questions next time. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Later, people. Bye. Thanks for hanging out.